we bring a quilt. We bring it here today with shocked sorrow at its vastness and the speed by which its acreage redoubles. We bring it to this place at this time, accompanied by our deepest hope that the leaders of our nation will see the evidence of our labor and our love, and that they will be moved. We bring a quilt. We've carried this quilt to every part of our country, and we have seen that the American people know how to defeat AIDS. We have seen that the answers exist, and that tens of thousands of Americans have already stepped forward to accept their share and more of this painful struggle. We have seen the compassion and the skill with which the American people fight AIDS and care for people with AIDS. We have witnessed the loving dedication of volunteers, families, and friends, and the extraordinary bravery of people with AIDS, themselves working beyond exhaustion. And everywhere in this land of ours, we have seen death. In the past 15 months, over 20,000 Americans have been killed by AIDS. 15 months from now, our new president will deliver his first State of the Union address. And on that day, America will have lost more sons and daughters to AIDS than we lost fighting in Southeast Asia, those whose names we can read today from a polished black stone wall. We bring a quilt. It grows day by day and night by night, and yet its expanse does not begin to cover our grief, nor does its heaviness outweigh the weight within our hearts. For we carry with us tonight a burdensome truth that must be simply spoken. History will record that in the last quarter of the 20th century, a new and deadly virus emerged, and that the one nation on earth with the resources, knowledge, and institutions to respond to the new epidemic failed to do so. History will further record that our nation's failure was based on ignorance, prejudice, greed, and fear, not within the heartlands of America, but within the Oval Office and the halls of Congress.
I believe it's a year later. What's different? I think a lot of things are different. When we were here last year, this country didn't even have a glimmer of a national policy on AIDS. And I think that now we're beginning to achieve a national consensus on what the policies should be through the HIV Commission's report. The fact that Governor Dukakis and Vice President Bush have both endorsed the HIV Commission report. I think people are also very aware that an additional 20,000 Americans have died since we were last here. So I think there's a heightened sense of urgency and determination.
My son Craig Flowers from Richmond, Virginia, 2 months ago today.
My son Scott, Thomas Cleaver, who said to me the last thing he said to me was, I love Dad best of all.
Mr. President, what do you have to say about the thousands of people who are dead of AIDS? Well, can you tell us why you have refused to endorse the recommendations of your own HIV commission? I mean, were you surprised that they came out with recommendations far more progressive than you had envisioned from them?
We did a Homophobe Hall of Fame where we took some of the leading homophobes here in Washington, D.C., including William Dannemeyer, Jesse Helms, Gordon Humphrey, Dan Quayle, William Armstrong. These are names that are infamous here in Washington because they consistently vote anti-gay. They are anti-gay, they are anti-age responsible policy. We want to call attention to them. We want gays and lesbians in the Capitol this weekend who are attending the quilt to learn these faces and learn these names, because these are the enemy.
John Calvert, and my very dear and close friends, Bruce Weintraub and Stephen Reichart.
Do you have a message for the president regarding the AIDS crisis?
Well, the president is a human being like us, and we're all in the same family. I guess that's the message, I think, of this whole thing, is we're all touched by each other. And in that touching, we are all responsible for and to each other. Clearly, we're in a state here, which a disease that is far and away the most horrendous thing that has happened to us health-wise in this century. And I think we're all imploring our government and our titular head, our President of the United States, to make available as much money as possible for research at this time.
We are not asking the FDA to release dangerous drugs without safety or efficacy. We are simply asking the FDA to do it quicker. It is possible to test these drugs in record time. I want to know why a known toxic drug like AZT with known side effects gets approved by the FDA in 18 months, while 80 drugs are waiting 5 to 7 years to be tested. I want to know why after 5 years, people are still traveling to Mexico to buy ribavirin illegally, and we still don't have any data on this drug in the United States. I'm here today because I don't want a quilt with my name on it to be in front of the White House next year.
This is only my opinion, but I think that the same 5,000 lesbians and gay men in the United States who have been reading the gay press for 20 years are concerned with AIDS, and the rest of them are living in the twilight zone. I don't think that most gay people are aware.
But there were 200 to 500, 600,000 people here last year.
Yes, and that happens. You realize, I mean, well, of course you realize, but people have to realize that a national march on Washington usually happens every 10 years, you know, or has happened now every 10 years. And that kind of organizing takes a year. And now here we're back 1 year later on the issue of AIDS, and I don't see enough people. I mean, one of the things that I wanted to say today was that everybody is always telling us about how the gay community has educated itself and done it well, and now we have to reach out and educate non-gay people. I don't think that's true. I don't think gay men are educated about AIDS. I think they're abysmally ignorant.
The other thing that we often quote from Vito Russo is the speech that you gave in Albany when you said it's not happening to them. Do you think that's changing a year later in terms of the AIDS crisis?
Yes, it is, but incrementally. I mean, it is happening to them, but it's happening more slowly than it happened to us. So we're still responsible.
We're going to be walking by the White House. What's your message with this candlelight march?
My message is I hope that we don't have another 4 years of silence and death, and we need some changes. Maybe we can paint the White House pink or purple.
You have a suggestion for a change?
More funding for AIDS, more compassion, more understanding, more involvement.
Change in the White House?
Yeah.
Well, do you think that Vice President Bush is going to be any better if he gets into office? What would you say if your son had AIDS?
I want to suggest that there is a strategy that we need to pursue in the times ahead that is very different from the most obvious strategy. It might seem that we have to make ourselves more palatable to be accepted. It might seem that, you know, the way we're going to get through these bills through Congress is to be more of lobbyists, to dress up in little suities and act like them and say, hey, we're just like you. We're just like you. We want our civil rights. We're no different. We want tolerance. Well, excuse me, honey. I don't want tolerance. I want respect. And excuse me, I am not like Dan Quayle. I am not like George Bush. I am not like Jesse Helms. I'm not like those cowards in Congress who vote against us every time. I am not one of them, and I will never be one of them. I don't want to be one of them.